For the next 3 years, I spent at the Cancer Research Department at Cambridge. And now I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I did there. But for that, let's talk about cancer. Now, cancer is a word that is associated with a lot of emotion, right? It instills a lot of fear. Because most of us know somebody who's either suffered from the disease or is suffering from the disease, and it's a devastating disease that, unfortunately, sometimes you don't survive. But what actually happens when you get cancer? For that, we need to talk about DNA and genes, right? I'm sure these are words you're familiar with. If anybody wants to volunteer, what do you think of when you think of genes or DNA? More biology students? Yeah, okay. And what is genetic material? I don't need a definition, but what comes to your head when you think of genetic material?
Inherited traits.
Yeah, absolutely. So genetic
characters from our past.
Hereditary characters that carried on.
Yeah, you're spot on. So it's something that we get from our parents. It's what makes us similar in some sense to our biological mother and father. But also it contains instructions for our body to follow. So we've got trillions and trillions of cells in our body. We've got brain cells that perform the function of a brain. We've got heart cells that perform the function of a heart. And each of these cells have this DNA. Right? And this DNA is essentially an encyclopedia for your body. It contains instructions for your body to follow. Now similar, have you seen those old encyclopedias which come in different volumes? You have volume A, volume B. So similarly, our DNA, which is encyclopedia, comes in chromosomes. And these chromosomes also have chapters. So you might have some chapters which contain instructions for your heart. So those are your heart genes. You might have some chapters which contain instructions for your brain. So those are your brain genes. So essentially your DNA is this whole encyclopedia, and the chapters are your genes, right? And now, as we live, we've got new cells that are being formed every minute. In fact, in the last minute, we made millions and millions of cells. And as these cells keep dividing, as a new cell keeps forming, basically what happens is that the old cell passes on this DNA, this whole encyclopedia. It has to photocopy this whole encyclopedia of instructions and give it to the new cell. This is very important because without that encyclopedia, the cell won't know what to do. So it has to pass on this encyclopedia. Now, if I ask you guys, let's say I open an encyclopedia to one page and ask you guys, I want you to copy that page exactly word to word. What might happen? You would probably get, all of us, will probably get most of it right, but we might make some spelling mistakes. We might miss out a word here and there. Our body copies this whole encyclopedia millions of times per second without, or very rarely, making any mistakes. It's fantastic. But in cancer, these mistakes creep up. So you could get some spelling mistakes, or you could get some deleted words. And essentially, think about it. If you've got a set of instructions, and you've got a spelling mistake, or you've got some words jumbled about, those instructions won't make sense anymore. And that's why you get cancer. But what actually causes these mistakes to happen in the first place? Well, as I said, a lot of it is just mistakes creeping up in cell division. And as you grow older, these mistakes accumulate, and they build up, and that causes cancer. A question I also get asked is, what about lifestyle factors? What about eating and smoking? Now, of course, if you eat unhealthily, if you smoke a lot, if you're stressed a lot, your body is under a lot of stress. And so you're inviting more mistakes in your genes, and so you're more likely to get cancer. But these lifestyle factors aren't just the only factor. So unfortunately, even if someone lives the most healthiest life, they still might get cancer. And I also get asked, is cancer hereditary? You get it from your parents. You do, but it's not very common. So you guys know of the Hollywood actress Angelina Jolie? So she, essentially her mother had a mistake in a gene, and her mother got breast cancer. And the doctors found out that Angelina Jolie also had that mistake. She inherited that mistake in the gene from her mother, and so she also would have a very high risk of getting breast cancer. So what they said is, let's just do surgery, and so now you won't get breast cancer anymore. So in her case, she inherited from her mother. But 90% of people, or more than 90% of people who get cancer, it's something you accumulate over your lifetime. It's not something that you're born with. Okay, so that was basically 101 for cancer. But how can we use all this information to try and find a cure? Well, it's a very complex problem. I'm going to try and explain one strategy and break it up into 2 bits. So as I said, in cancer, you have some mistake in your genes. You've got a mistake in your DNA. So the first step is to try and find that mistake, right? So how many of you guys can find the mistake in this slide? If you find the mistake, just raise your hand. Just raise your hand. I'm going to give you a few. I'm going to give you a few more seconds. So we've got. Yeah. Okay, excellent. So what's the mistake? Exactly. And you see that still took a few seconds, right? This is just a six-word sentence, but it still took a few seconds to find that mistake. Our DNA has 3 billion letters. 3 billion. So imagine trying to find a mistake in your DNA. So of course there you need, again, advanced mathematical models to try and do that. But once you find the mistake, that's not just sufficient. You have to understand what the consequences of that mistake is. Now, a mistake in one gene could cause one type of breast cancer. A mistake in another gene could cause another type of breast cancer. A spelling mistake could cause one consequence. A deleted word could cause another consequence. So you really need to integrate your cancer biology and your genetics knowledge when you find these mistakes. So step 1 is to find these mistakes and understand the consequences of these mistakes. And then step 2 is to try and find the drug that can actually treat this genetic mistake. Now, this is not very easy because, as I said, you're finding so many mistakes. You have mistakes in one gene, you have to find a drug for that. You find a mistake in another gene, you have to find another drug for that. So it's not just one drug. So how do we use this research to help us treat patients? So at the moment, or in the recent past, if we had a lot of patients, let's say with breast cancer, we only had one therapy for all of them. And that therapy may work in some people, it would not work in some people, and for another set, it would work for a few years, but then it would stop working. And this is not satisfactory. So we can use all of that research to do genetic testing. So now if you have a large bunch of patients with breast cancer, the hope in the future is we would get to what's called personalized medicine, where for every patient, you can then do genetic testing. You then find, okay, for these group of patients, they have a mistake in gene A. For these group of patients, it's a mistake in gene B. For these patients, it's a mistake in gene C. So, of course, you can't give the same treatment because they're completely different root causes. So we give different treatments for each of these groups, and then hopefully it works. So that's what we're looking at the future for cancer research. And that's essentially the research that we're doing. So this is the lab that I was working at Cambridge.